Margaret Winters had waited 30 years for this moment. At 50, her silver-streaked hair and lined face told stories of patience, the kind that ferments into something dark and purposeful. The Connecticut mansion loomed before her, its Gothic windows gleaming in the October moonlight. This was the Ashford Estate, where her life had been destroyed 3 decades ago when she was just 20. Back then, she'd been a young maid, accused of theft by Victoria Ashford to cover up Victoria's own embezzlement. Margaret had lost everything: her reputation, her job, her chance at the nursing career she'd dreamed of. But Margaret had learned patience, and she'd learned other things too. The iron gates opened soundlessly. Margaret had been planning this for years, studying Victoria's routines, her fears, her secrets. Victoria was 70 now, a widow living alone in this enormous house, haunted by guilt she'd never confessed. Margaret's shoes made no sound on the gravel driveway. In her bag, she carried nothing but a small music box, the same one Victoria had planted in Margaret's quarters all those years ago as evidence of theft. The front door was unlocked. Victoria was expecting her. "Hello, Victoria." Margaret's voice echoed through the marble foyer. A lamp flickered on in the drawing room. Victoria sat in a wingback chair, her hands trembling. "You said you'd come to talk, to let me apologize." "I did say that." Margaret's smile was cold as winter frost. "But I didn't say I'd accept it." She wound the music box. Its tinny melody filled the room, a children's lullaby that seemed to warp and distort in the cavernous space. "What do you want?" Victoria's voice cracked. "I want you to understand what you took from me." Margaret moved closer, her shadow stretching across the Persian rug. "Every opportunity, every relationship, every moment of peace I might have had. You stole my life, Victoria." The temperature in the room plummeted. Victoria's breath came out in visible puffs. "That's impossible," Victoria whispered. The heating is fine." Margaret's eyes gleamed. "Tell me, Victoria, do you believe in curses?" During her exile from society, Margaret had wandered far. She'd found people who taught her things, old things, dark things, things that predated the manicured lawns of Connecticut estates. She'd learned that revenge didn't have to be served with violence. Sometimes it could be served with terror. The shadows in the room began to move independently of the lamplight. "What have you done?" Victoria stood, backing toward the wall. "I've brought you some company." Margaret gestured to the portraits lining the walls, generations of Ashfords, all stern-faced and judgmental. "Your ancestors, all the people you've tried so hard to impress, whose legacy you protected by destroying mine." The eyes in the portraits began to weep blood. Victoria screamed, but the sound seemed to be swallowed by the house itself. "They know what you did," Margaret continued, her voice eerily calm. "They know about every lie, every betrayal, every person you've stepped on to maintain your precious reputation. And they're not pleased." The portraits began to whisper, a chorus of disappointed voices speaking Victoria's sins aloud. Her embezzlement, her lies, her cruelty to servants, her infidelities, her role in her husband's mysterious death. "Stop it, please." Victoria collapsed to her knees. "I spent 30 years in poverty because of you," Margaret said, kneeling beside her. 30 years watching people cross the street to avoid the thief. 30 years of doors closing in my face. Do you know what that does to a person?" "I'm sorry," Victoria sobbed. "I'll give you money, anything." "I don't want your money." Margaret's hand gripped Victoria's chin, forcing her to look into her eyes. "I want you to feel what I felt. The isolation, the helplessness, the knowledge that your life has been stolen and there's nothing you can do about it." The music box's melody grew louder, more discordant. The shadows coalesced into figures, not quite human, not quite anything else. "What are they?" Victoria gasped. "Your guilt," Margaret replied. "Given form. They'll be your only companions now, Victoria. This house will become your prison, just as my ruined reputation was mine. You'll never leave. Every time you try, they'll bring you back, and every day you'll relive what you did to me. You'll feel my pain, my desperation, my rage. Margaret stood, smoothing her coat. The difference is, I eventually found a way out of my prison. You never will. As she walked toward the door, Victoria's screams echoed behind her. The shadow figures closed in, whispering accusations in voices that sounded like every person Victoria had ever wronged. Margaret paused at the threshold, looking back one last time. Victoria was curled on the floor, surrounded by darkness, finally understanding the hell she'd created for another woman 30 years ago. "Goodbye, Victoria," Margaret said softly. "I hope you enjoy your retirement." The front door closed behind her with a definitive click. Behind it, the screaming continued, but no one would hear it. Margaret had made sure of that too. As she walked down the driveway, the autumn wind caught her hair, and for the first time in 30 years, Margaret Winters smiled a genuine smile. Justice, she'd learned, doesn't always come from a courtroom. Sometimes it comes from knowing exactly how to make someone's worst fears come alive. The end.